G'day my friends, Marty Ware here from martysgarden.com.au. Now I've got the new series coming out. Yes, it's 6 videos, rolled into 3 videos. My mate Peter Axsia from wormbeers.com.au is actually presenting the whole show. And in the first video, which you're going to see today, he just shows you the basics of setting up a worm farm and how the things actually work. And then at the end, he moves through the worm cafe showing you how he's got his setup and the food in there, the different bedding and how the worms are working and the whole lot. It's pretty interesting stuff and not sort of common material and content that you would see that often. Now, in the next lot of videos that come through after that, he shows you all these different types of worm farms that he's got set out throughout his farm. Everything from sort of dog manure to underground worm farms, different types of ways to use the worms. Look, it's too much to mention, but if you're into worm farming or you want to learn more about worm farming, this series is the one for you. So watch the first part, and if you're watching this video later, the next ones will be ready for you because they're rolling out over the next couple of weeks. Right, enjoy the video. We've been collecting this seed and then re-sprouting it and putting it in our salad. Let's have a look at him.
And I caught him without breaking his cow.
Alright, so today we're going to have a look at the most popular worm farm going, and that is our tiered system tumbleweed realm worm cafe. So we're just going to quickly open it up, and today we're just going to have a look at how we actually set the worm farm up. So this is the cardboard. We're going to put this aside because we're going to need that later. We've got a lid. We've got a few holes in the lid to allow the ventilation, and these lugs, they also act as a few other purposes, such as a lid holder. Right, so the next part, instruction manual, legs, and we've also got the block of bedding in here, and there is a tap somewhere in here, so we'll get to all this stuff in a minute. First, I just wanted to show you a couple of the features of this this worm farm in particular, and this is how this system actually operates. So it's got lots of holes in the bottom, and the worms in the water are actually able to move. Well, the water only goes down, but the worms can move upwards and downwards. We also have these lugs, so that each tray sits on top of these lugs, so it doesn't squash the worms. It actually allows a bit of air and everything around, and the worms to get through easy. So we do have 3 of these trays, and then we have the bottom reservoir. So now this is where all the extra features and benefits really exist in this latest. So we've got a cone here, so that the worms are actually able to come up, and that meets at the bottom of the first tray, so that the worms can no longer get drowned. Now I've got a few other little tips that I can show you about that later, but for the time being, they've also added these bigger lugs in the corners with some extra ventilation. Now this has made a big difference with this model, and in the situation of the worms going down, they do get captured up in those corners, and it allows them to get back up into that tray. So this is a really good system. You can see that the pickup point, the bottom tap, is the lowest part of the worm farm, and so that when you are catching the leachate, you're catching it all, and it's once again, it's not flooding the worms. So the older models didn't really have any of this. This is the new model. It's slightly different to their other tiered system, the can of worms. This has a few extra benefits, and we can have a look at the other worm farm setup. But the main difference is that this has an extra tray. It doesn't have as much material, so it's not heavy. So if you do have any sort of issue lifting heavy items, this worm farm is probably the worm farm for you. So let's have a look at assembling the rest of the worm farm. Alright, so just a quick look at the legs and the way that they go on. So really simple stuff, but a lot safer than the old models. They don't collapse anywhere near as easy. But the best part is is that they literally go on, click like that. So the bedding block, I'm just going to set this aside. We're going to expand that in a bucket of water later when we're actually setting the worm farm up. But for the time being, I've put the tap on, so it just screws with a grommet on the inside. We're going to put the legs on, make sure that they click. Turn her upside down. Put the trays back in. Obviously there's no worms in here at the minute. We're going to set that up in a bit. The lid. Five minutes. Alright, so in the last video we talked about the worm cafe and how to assemble it. We talked about some of the features. Now we're going to have a look at the worm. This is the canner worm, so a slightly different worm farm, but it's still a tiered system. One of the main differences is that this is a 4-tray system, where this is only a 3-tray system, and that's including the reservoir. So we've got 3 working trays, and we've got 2 working trays with this one. So very similar. We've got ventilation, and we can use this later on in the top tray. Now the big difference with these ones is that there's a bit more volume in these canner worms. So even though they've only got the 2, they still have essentially as much volume, just not the same surface areas as the other ones. So in this one, this is one of the popular ones because it's the cheapest worm farm going, and this typically is really just used for having the food in the top, pouring the water in, catching the leachate out the bottom, and then using the liquids through. This system doesn't really allow you to move through the trays, but let's have a look and we'll see what the older tray looks like. And we've got some worms hiding in the castings, and you can see that there's a lot of baby worms in here, and there's not a lot of feed in here, because now we're actually the baby worms are coming through, and we're about to harvest this tray, and we're going to use the castings throughout the garden and then use the worms in the next tray. But there's one more thing underneath here with the reservoir, and currently I've got the tap open, and I'm actually got some worms and some straw and that type of thing coming down here. Now that's just the safety zone, so whenever we have too much water or we have a blockage with the tap, it helps that the worms can actually live a little bit better down in here as well. So that's just one of the little tricks that we can do with these tiered systems. And now what we can do is we can take a look at the difference between the flow-through systems, which are these bigger worm farms here on my left, and we'll talk about some of the features. Now, just a couple of things to keep in mind about these worm farms is that they are black, and they do heat up quite a bit. So as you can see, it's quite a sunny day here. I've got them on my back wall here because it really prevents the sun from getting to them too much. So we really want to make sure that we keep these worm farms in an area that has no direct sunlight for too much of the day. We can build shade structures, but during the summertime you really want to keep these in the shade.
So I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. Peter, he is just a wealth of knowledge, and he's going to share more with you in the very near future. He really is the underground secret guru in worm farming. Now, he actually took one of my customers, one of my clients, bought some worms from him, and he actually took them to the house and dropped them off, and they were absolutely blown away. You just never know what Peter will do. He's a great guy, and if you want to buy some worms, head over to wormbeers.com.au and get your worms today. He'll drop them off to you or send them in the mail. And don't forget to subscribe, guys, because there's more videos on the way. I'm really stepping things up here at Marty's Garden to produce the best possible content that I know how to do for you guys, to teach you how to grow fresh food fast in urban places and small spaces. Now I nearly stuffed that up then, didn't I? That sounds good, doesn't it? Fresh food fast in urban places and small spaces. Could be a new jingle. Bye for now.